All right, so this is the next video. This next video will be touching the different modeling approach or the different 3D creation approach. Now, there are different modeling style. We have primitive modeling, we have polygonal modeling, we have sculpting, we have spline, like knobs, like NUBR knobs approach. Then we have volumetric, and we also have metaball. For this first video, we'll be touching the primitive modeling approach. Now, it's called primitive because you only have access to use the pre-existing materials, pre-existing, or what's the word? Yeah, pre-existing shapes or pre-existing meshes. An example of a pre-existing mesh is one we have here. Let me give you a list of them. We have the plane, we have the cube, we have this circle here, we have the UV sphere, we have the icosphere, we have all under mesh, by the way. We have the cone, we have, what else do we have? We have the torus, and then we have the cylinder. So all these you see are all primitive objects. They are all primitive. Why? Because they are already pre-made for you. So this is how they look like, and there's physically little or no manipulation that can be done on them. For some of them, there is, for instance, this cube is a cube. There's nothing you cannot reduce a cube to something less than a cube. If you reduce it to something less than a cube, it becomes not a cube. And then we have a plane. This is like the simplest form you can ever go. This plane is like nothing else can be done to it on a primitive level. Primitive level meaning that looking at it the way it is, there is nothing else that can be done to it without breaking the internal structure. As long as you want to maintain the internal structure, a plane is a plane. So that's why it's primitive. There's no you can't reduce it to less than it looks. The moment you start reducing it, it's no longer it changes from being a plane to something else. And the moment you attempt to increase it, it changes from being a plane to something else. So that's why it's primitive. But there are so many things you can do with a primitive object, by the way, so many creative things you can do. And we'll touch on it a bit as we proceed. So in this class, we'll do a little touch up on adding colors or material to your primitive shape, adding at least one light and rendering just to so that I can see the process. All right, let me delete this so I can start creating something. So to get your primitive shape or primitive object, all you need to do is, now don't forget this is the outliner, the wash of the outliner. This is your primitive. The object mode here is where we are going to. We're not going to anything deeper than the object mode because what we're working on basically is the primitive objects. So let's say I want to create a boxy robot. So for a boxy robot, I'll shift A. This is the mesh. All this, everything here, they are all primitive. The mesh, everything here, they are all primitive. So to create a boxy robot, let's say it's a robot. Let me create the chest region of the robot. Now, whenever you create something in Blender at a primitive level, you will notice that this stuff here appears. Now, please be mindful of that area. Sometimes it is like this, sometimes it is like this. Now, this is the internal structure of making it on a primitive level. So for cube now, you only have size. You can increase or decrease it. increase or decrease it. So I will have to decrease mine because 2 meter is quite large for something or what I want to create. Let's use zero point 0.5. Let's do 0.5 meter. Yeah. So let me zoom closer. So, so don't forget to alt and the left mouse button to orbit. The middle mouse scroll wheel forward and backward is to zoom. This is orbiting. The middle mouse button is to zoom. The scroll forward and backward is to zoom. And then we have the pan. If you hold down the middle mouse button, you have a pan. So if you are not really comfortable with the mouse, you can always use this, and this until you gain mastery of the mouse. So this, then I can move this up. Now to move something up, the short key, we have, this is the move tool, this is the rotate tool, and this is the scale tool. This last one is a combination of the three of them. The move, the scale, and the rotate, you can have them all at once, but this one is the move tool. So we can move it left and right, we can move it left and right, we can move it back and forth. Now, while moving, because you have in 3D work viewport, there sometimes you may want to move something and you will not see, you'll be doing something like this. This is inaccurate sometimes. All you need is some I to move around effectively. You will need to orbit frequently to see what you're doing from every angle, because what is good on one angle may look bad on another angle. So it's not a rush. Be calm enough and progressively keep building up from there. So I have this boxy. I've moved it up here. So let's now say that this is my boxy robot. I want it to have a stomach region of a round stomach region. So what I will use for that is, let me use a UV sphere. Now, just like the robot, the head of the robot, the UV sphere here, you notice that this appears also. So all these are the freedom, the basic freedom you have for a primitive object. Now I can, if this is too smooth, like you notice that the edges are lined. When we get to the when we get to the edit mode, that's when we are working on polygonal modeling. There's something we call um edge loop. Yeah, when we go edge loop, and what that does is it helps you, it explains why this stuff is less boxy. So if it's too much, you can reduce it here, the segment. You can reduce it, and if it's too small, you can always increase it. Yeah. So for me, let me increase it. Reduce it. Let me give it something like 16. Yeah, 16. Okay. So then instead of moving it, move it back. Let me move it back to where this cube is. I'll move it back, move the cube back also. Now, if it's not giving, if I'm not sure what's going on and I'm orbiting, it's not giving me a hard time, I can switch this viewport to tab. I go to the front. Now this is front now, so I can effectively move this one more accurately than when it was just standing in the 3D viewport perspective view. So notice that I've gotten it, but then let me change it again. Front is accurate at the front. Let's check back. It's accurate at the back. Let's check left at all. So I'll move it also at the left angle so that it can align properly. So when I move back to my perspective, notice that it's much more accurate. Yeah. Please, while this is going, if there's any area that seems confusing, feel free to drop a message and I will respond as quick as I can. All right. So then let's see what else do we need for this first robot? Yeah, let's give the robot a kind of eyes. Let's give it eyes. So let's, okay, shift A. Let's choose torus for cylinder. Torus. Let's use this torus. Now, similar to everything, this is the build up. So if it's too much, I can reduce it. If it's too small, I can increase it. Let me reduce it to, yeah, something like this. So then let's introduce this, the rotate. So I can rotate this. Let's rotate it like this so that it will fit into where I am, but quite, it is too large. So all I need is scale. Let's scale it down. Let's scale it down. So you notice that I'm scaling with this large ring. Now, so the move tool, I'm using the tool or the, yeah, okay. Now the way I'm currently doing it now is largely not the standard. The standard we use for move is G. G is the grab key for or move is to grab. When I press G, for instance, when I press G, this is G. But if I want to constrain the movement, let's say I want to constrain it to the x-axis, I'll press G then X. So it constrains the movement to the x-axis. I press G and Y, constrain the movement by y-axis, G and Z to the z-axis. So currently G and X is much more is preferable. So let me check on all angle. Is it good? Yeah, I think it's good enough. Then now this, let's assume I want to give it a spherical shape in the middle, like an eye. So I can, instead of creating a new UV sphere, all I need is just to duplicate the existing one. So I'll press Shift D is a short key for duplicate. Shift D, then I will press the, yeah, X is delete. So in case you make a mistake, you can press X to delete or Ctrl Z. Ctrl Z. So Shift D, then move that again. Shift D. I press Shift D to move it out. So it's duplicated now. Then I will right click so that it will be on the same spot. So I press G Z. Now this is moving up. So I press for scaling, that is the size. Instead of clicking on this, I'll just click S and will scale it down for me. Then I'll press GX, that is on the X axis. So if it's not giving me what I want, I mean position is a bit off, I can move it into position. Now looking at this, you will notice something, that the edge, this area where you can see this sharp line, let me zoom it closer so you can see this sharp line. Now these are the area of the segment or the edges, the build up of this UV sphere. But now I want this area, currently they are all rounded like this. Let me use this to show you. It's going like this. This is how it's going. But I want it to face this angle. I want it to go this way. Like I want it to come like this instead of going like this. So what I can do is I'll go to click on R, rotate, and X axis or Y axis by the way. So while I'm rotating it or scaling it, I can press some function like 45. If I press 45, it will rotate 45 degree. If I press 90, it will rotate 90 degree. So depending on what I want, so like currently I want it to go this way. So let's see if I go with 90, 90 degree works. I press enter. So while you are working on the axis, like let's say you press on G for grab and X to constrain it to an axis, you can press some numbers. Those numbers, it will add up to the current movement. So we want to scale it by 90. Just press S and then press 90. If you scale up what you have done 90 degree, it is rotate. I often use it for rotate most of the time and not, I don't use it for scale, I don't use it for move. I basically use it for the rotate because that's much more understandable. So it is 0, 30, 45, 0, 15, 30, 45, then 75, yeah, then 75, then we have 90, then we have 1, yeah, 105, 90 plus 15, that is 105, then we have 125, then we have progressive like that. So all increment of 15 or increment of 45, depending on what you're going for. Can be an increment of 15 or increment of 45, depending on what you're going for. All right, so that's that. Let's move this inward a bit. So and be mindful in 3D, things can overlap each other. They enter each other like this. So let's say I'm a bit okay with this. Let us say I'm a bit okay with this. Now on the neck area, let's assume give it a neck. I want to give it a neck and give it a neck. So I can move this a bit down, and then to give it a neck, let's assume I want something that I want this neck to be something rotatable in 360. So I will need something that in the real sense permits 360 rotation. And the easiest one is A, is the cylinder. So I click on the cylinder, this is set it segments, the fastest. I can reduce this to, let's say, 16, or let's use 8. Yeah, let's use 8. Let's click on it and write there 8. So that's good enough. Let's move this back, and then let's scale it. S for scale, and then G for grab, Z for Z axis. This is not what I want to grab. So now, currently the cylinder is inside the UV sphere, so it is hard for me to pick it. So the easiest way to find it is I'll just come to my outliner and click on the cylinder and press GZ. So you can see that it's currently moving. So now we have it in place. There should be, yeah. So this my, so currently now, looking at it, the robot head can now rotate more freely. Let's just move this down a little bit more. Now, what we are doing now is called, it's called primitive modeling. We are using primitive shapes to create something without going overly in depth. So as the class progresses, in the next video, I'll explain how to use the polygonal modeling process, which is much more intuitive and much more interesting, if you ask me, because there you can build anything. In the primitive level, you are constrained by many things, but in the polygonal level, you are more free. Yeah, let's click on this. Now this is this, but this is not what I want. I want it to be much more rounder. So I'll increase the segment. Be mindful of this area every time it creates something new. Yeah, so I can, let's say, minor the can also increase or decrease the size. Let me make it a bit thick. Yep. So I want this to be like a tire, a wheel. So scale it down a bit, too small. So rotate 90 degrees into the left on the left angle. To be mindful, it may look okay on one angle and look bad on the other angle. Please be mindful of it. Be always mindful of what you're creating. Be always mindful of what you're creating. Alright, so now I've done this. So to duplicate, Shift D, you have a duplicate, you right click, it should be on the same position, just G grab and Y axis, and then you move to the next area to see it properly. Just make sure you are mindful of what you're creating. So now to an eye extent, let's assume this is my robot. Let's assume this is my robot. It's a walking wheel and a rotatable belly. This belly can rotate, the head also can rotate. So let's now add a few more details to it and say, okay, let's say we want to give it like let's say a timer or a mount, something at the belly area. So shift A, and then let's put it into the necessary block area. So let me scale this on the Y axis and then put it inside as it should be. Alright. So now this is like a basic robot. A basic robot. Now this is like a basic robot. So shouldn't now looking at this robot, you notice something that some areas are quite sharp and some are quite few. And that's where we come into something we call modifier. So we'll dive into it the more we grow in the class. So for now, the basic two modifiers we'll be using now are the first one is called the bevel. Now the bevel modifier, let's click on this cube and then we move to this area here with this spanner icon or wrench. We modify for modifiers. Click on it, add modifier, and you click on search. Search for bevel. Okay, bevel. B-E-V-L-E. B-E-V-E-L. Now this is too much bevel, so let's reduce it. So okay, this should be okay. Let's now increase the segment. Now the more segments you have, the more curve this area will look. Currently it looks 45 degree, so we can 30 degree, you can increase the segment. So the more segments you have, the more beautiful the curve will look like. Alright. So and in the modifier panel you can add more than one modifier. Now this is okay currently, so but if it's too sharp, you can now add something we call subdivision surface. S-U-B, then division. So click on it, and with the subdivision, you can see it here. I can increase the subdivision. Now we have viewport and we have render. If I click on this, you notice that it's now quite smooth. Quite smooth. It's quite smooth. But have it in mind that the more you add to the subdivision, the more it will take more energy from your PC. Alright. So then this second one, the same thing, you can add subdivision to it. Click on the wrench and then add subdivision. So give it that smoothness. But let's assume you don't add subdivision. You can right click and see shade smooth. Right click on any object, you see shade smooth. This shade smooth helps you give you a smooth area, but then it doesn't actually add to the render time. So there are times when you will need to use this to save your render speed, and there are times when you don't need to. Currently, when I did shade smooth, you notice that it was every area became very smooth. But let's assume I don't need that. Right click, I'll go to shade flat to return it back to how it looks like. When I click on and say shade smooth, make it quite smooth. Let's leave it as shade smooth for now. Then the tires, let's go to as usual bevel. Let's start with bevel. Let's bevel it a bit, and then let's do shade smooth. No, and just add subdiv. Yeah, subdiv will be better for this one. Then I'll right click and say shade smooth. And similar to that, I'll just click on this. Click on this. Yeah, click on this. The first thing is the bevel. Increase is just a 3. Then we have subdiv, make it 1, and then you right click, sweetness. So you have something rubbery. Now for this one, let's just use bevel for it. Now currently I'm using the modifiers. The modifiers. Yeah, let's use the bevel for this. Let's use the bevel for this. 35. Alright, 35. So let's see. Right. So let's push this in what it did, lift it up a bit. Yeah, out what it did. Alright. So can I extend my mini robot is almost ready. Now the next thing we can add to it is let's put it on a road or something. So shift A, let's use a landmass. Let's do, and then S to scale, let's scale this up so that it gives that feeling that this robot is not just floating in the air but standing on something. That's why I put this floor there. You can see when I move, let me pull this GZ. Okay, alright. So make sure you're always orbiting to see how your object interacts. How your object interacts. Yeah. So so now this let's assume we are through with our robot, we are going to land. Let's give it a wall. This is the land, for instance. Let's now shift D. Let's shift A, okay, shift D on the floor. And then let's rotate it for 45 degrees. Let's do more than that. Let's do 45 degrees. Yeah, and push it back so that yep. Yeah, so this is the wall, this is the floor. Let's pan it. So what I'm currently doing is it's called I'm setting the stage for this my mini robot. All right. So now the stage is set, the floor is set. Okay, the robot is literally floating in mid-air. So let's just leave it at this. All right. So then all we need is, like I mentioned in our first video about this area called render preview. As I click on this one now, we have this first one. This first one is called X-ray. The second one is just the solid. The third one is the okay, in a few minutes. Alright, so we have the first one. This is the X-ray mode. X-ray, this first one here. We have four. We have the X-ray mode. We have the solid mode. This is solid mode. We have the material preview mode, and then we have the final render. This is where the most interesting one. This is the one that we are going to. This is our goal basically. This final render. Currently, you can see it is black or dark. The reason why it is like that is because there is no light in the scene. We have been working here all this while, so everything seems as it's bright and the light, but it's bright, but this is not what our final render will look like. So we click on this and then shift A, let's bring in a light. So there will be a separate video explaining light, but for now, let's just use the point light for now. Yeah, the point light. So let's increase. When I click on the light, you notice that just come here, property, and then we can increase the wattage. So we just use one point light by the way for now. So now our light is ready, but our color, our robots still look like a lump of one color, which you don't want. So let us give it different colors. So let's give this part. Now to change the materials, it's called material. There will be a separate video explaining materials and texture. For now, let, let's just call it colors. So now this is a robot, but I want to give it some different um, color. Like let's say this tire here should be rubbery. This one here can be metallic. The head can be metallic or plastic. This one can be like a rubber. Or let's assume we want to make the whole robot, most of the parts of the robot look like a rubber, give it a rubber feeling. So that's the material and texture. We'll explain that in another video. For now, just follow along. So come here. Now to change the materials of each of these objects, both the floor, the wall, and the robot, you come down here on the properties panels. Yeah, and click on material. So let's start with this new. So you can just change the color. Let's use something bluish. Maybe something bluish, and then let's leave it the way it is. Let's come here to this tool. Let's use hard. Let's use something. Let's use black. Here also, let's come here. But these two, I want them to have the same material. So this is black. This is the name here, material 002. I'll click on this. Instead of clicking on new, I'll click on this area and then material 2. So they will have the same material. I'll click on this, a new one, and I'll change it to, let's say, something goodish. That works. Oh yeah, that works. And then I can, let me push this down. Yep. Then I'll come here, the head also. So I want the head and this to have the same material. So just like that first one, I'll click on the head, come here and change it to material 3. The head has it. So I want the eye socket should be reddish. I click on that also, give it something red. So and this area can give it the same material as the tires. Oh, it's ugly. Let's use the material of the body. It looks ugly. Okay, yeah, let's use this and make this black instead. Material of the tire. All right. So we have this toy-like structure. Oh, the neck. I forgot the neck. So move closer to the neck. Click on it. So yeah, if you are finding it hard to select, just come to the outliner, click on it, and let's give the neck the same color as the head, that yellow material 3. So we have that. So that's that. So currently you can see that this rendering is happening. So and this, when you start rendering, it has a lot of pressure on your PC. So, when you have gotten this right here, all you just need basically is how will you render this out so you can post it. So you come down here. So let's go back to this. Now this view, when I click on this, you notice that this changes to something like this. So when I go back to the view, it gives you this. But the last one gives you this interesting feel, which is nice. When we get to rendering, I'll explain the rendering process. But for now, just follow along. Now to render anything out in Blender, you need a camera. So when we get to the camera lesson, I'll explain that also. But for now, let's just go to Shift A. You see camera. This is your camera. So how do you move your camera? Just like move your object around, you can move your camera around. So to get into the camera, just click on this icon here. Click on this icon and then click on this area here. You see, click on, let me go back again. Click on the camera, click on this little arrow and go to the view. And you now see this area, lock camera, lock camera to view. So with that, I can move this guy a little bit backwards and set my angle the way I would love it to be viewed. So when we get to the camera section, I've explained how to properly set your camera and all. It is called composition, by the way. Composition. Make it look nice. So let me move this landform to the side a bit more. All right. So now we have gotten our camera set. Let me click on this. Yeah. So let me click on this out, move this back inside. So to go back to how it looks like before we move the camera, we can just click on the camera again, out into the camera. So you want to lock the camera, you click on this button here. So I click on this button here, I'll be able to move my object around to the area that looks nice. If not, if I want to move the camera, I'll click out and then move the whole camera. But let's just lock it for now. Click on the camera. Yeah, click on the camera, and then this is our point light. So we need materials for the ground also. So go to your materials, add, let's change this to, okay, let's see what works. Let's see black, but let's make it reflective, zero roughness. And this also, let's go back here. Yeah, and this also, you can see the ground material, last material. So let's see if I change the color to, let's say, white material, how will it look like? No. Okay. I'm looking for, yeah, let's use this. It's 50% material. So click on the camera to review it, or does it look nice as much? Okay, let's use this black material. So let's move this a bit upwards and set it. Now this, what we've done now with the, now that we have the material, we can now render. Now, like I said earlier, we didn't explain the full-blown material, we didn't explain the camera, we didn't explain the lighting. There's a separate video that will explain that. This is just to set up our scene and show you how to render. So to render it out, you come to your render panel, you see render image. So this new window will appear. This is your normal Blender. This is your render viewport. So now this one is the one that you have with this one. When this is true, this is what will be rendered out of Blender, and then you can post it. Go to image, you see save as, you can post it and show your friends and the like, or start populating your Instagram or whatever platform you use to market your project. You save as, so save as, you can save it anywhere on your document. Let me use my desktop and say save as RGB basically for now. Save as image. When I close this down, and let's say I close down Blender, let me open this out for you. You see this. So this is what I just did in Blender. Now it is now a picture that I can post and do whatever with. All right. So that's that about that on Primitive. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll work on a video on that also. Thank you very much.